listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm joined with my friend Jamie Rhea. She is a multidimensional being, energy healer, and channel. She does a lot of work in the astral realm and has been given many gifts from spirit, some of which we will be discussing in this conversation. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. It's so nice to meet you in person.
I know, yeah. It is nice to meet people in person. You really can connect better that way.
Right. Yeah, I have so many internet friends, and I might never meet some of them. So it's like an honor to actually get to connect and work with them directly. So.
It is. I agree with that. Yeah.
So, all right. So for those who don't know much about you, could you give us a little background on yourself and your spiritual journey?
Sure. Yeah. So about 4 years ago, I began a meditation practice. And shortly after I began the meditation, I started having visions pretty quickly within weeks after I had began this meditation practice. And as time went on, I would have more and more visions. They would become more and more intense. And I started seeing colors in meditation, which drew me to energy healing, because at that point I had realized that energy was a real thing, and I didn't really know much about it until that point. So I was drawn to get into energy healing and learn a little bit more about that. And as time has gone on, I opened to mediumship, psychic abilities. I can smell, taste, touch, all of those. I've experienced just about all of those clair abilities. Some are stronger than others, and I think that's just the way it is for most people. Some are more prominent. And then at one point, about 2 years into this disciplined, meditative practice, I had a energy seizure in my hammock one day on my lunch break at work. I had no clue what was happening. I'd never experienced anything like that before. And so, but I knew what was happening was energetic, because I had a vision of a form of a person in a meditative pose carrying a set of, like, a whole 7 chakra system. And when that vision came to me, I could feel it hit my energetic field, and my body began to sweep. Like, I felt the sweeping of energy vibration roll over me. And I must have fell asleep briefly. And I woke up to a seizure-like state. And so I was laying in my hammock, having this sort of experience, frightened, not knowing what was going on, what was happening. I still had my conscious ability with me, though. So even though my body is shaking uncontrollably, my process was still there, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I have to calm down. Not in a panic, like I'm scared, but not in a panic state. I have to calm down. And so at some point, after probably, it seemed like a couple minutes, which is a long time, I started to calm back down, and I collected myself and got out of my hammock and packed it up and went back to work. And then when I got back to work, I'm thinking, wow, what just happened? Like, what is this? At that point, I couldn't talk to God. So I didn't have them to be, to come in and say, oh, well, this is just this or whatever. I could definitely feel, though, a sense, like a sensation in my head. And it felt more like centered, like in the pineal area, airy and light. It wasn't like heavy or painful. It was like this air sensation. And over the course of a week, I could, one day I was at home and I started feeling energy sensations swirling around on my back. A lot of energetic stuff started happening then. And within, I'd say another week, I opened to spirit communication. And then when that happened, I entered a state of psychosis shortly after that. I couldn't function when I did go to work. The voices were just so too loud. I had pretty much blew my energetic body wide open.
Right.
And that amount of energy coming into the body really just blows the sensories. That's that's the best way I can describe it. So if a spirit was near me, I could hear them.
Right.
It was an overload on all levels. And with that, my body was vibrating at a higher state. I could tell my energy centers would just pulse very fast. And a lot of that would keep me from sleeping at night, So I would have these days after that where I didn't sleep for about 36 hours or so, just complete psychosis, unable to function. My mom would try to like fix meals for me, and I would remember her coming in, and after that I'd get lost in the voices and all the other things. And so I started receiving energy work from gods and light beings and family members shortly after that to level everything back out so I could function again.
Right.
But the psychosis lasted for about 3 months. And then after that, I was able to function a little bit better and just gradually get back into work and all those sort of things. And the astral travel was part of that. And past lives and other things. During that period, I was having like daytime hallucinations from, the overwhelming energy in the body that I was experiencing. I could walk outside and see sacred geometry in the grass. And I noticed one day I was trying to relax out in my hammock and I started feeling bubbles coming up from the lower part of my body. And I went inside, feeling the sensations. I went inside and I laid down. And as I laid down, I started to see what I was feeling, and that was the past lives in bubbles. And they would float up in a bubble, and they would be it was like a short movie I was watching of a part of that life playing out somewhere, I remember seeing one bubble that floated up. There was a woman working in a factory. And then the next one would be a male, like on standing out on the street talking to someone. I recall seeing a female dancing in a 50s era poodle skirt. And a witch was one of those. I watched myself be burnt alive. I had my hands tied behind like a wooden pole, and the fire had already been lit and was igniting. and burning. And then I saw many others after that. And the very first life, which was the very last bubble that I saw, I was a dinosaur. I was a T-Rex. That was my first planetary incarnation here.
Right. That's so interesting. You just said dinosaur because as you might not remember the movie We're Back. Do you remember the dinosaur movie We're Back? There
No.
is the machine. It's called the Wish Machine.
Okay.
And it's like these bubbles come out and it's all these little wishes of these children. And they're like, I wish for, dinosaurs, dinosaurs. But it's funny because, like you said, dinosaur at the end. And I was already like, this makes me think of the Wish Machine because it's literally visions within these bubbles.
Yeah.
So that's so interesting. Like, I think you having the experience that's so intense and all that is why having some guidance during these transitions as we're getting these upgrades is so valuable. Like in the past we had the guru or the teacher or the spiritual teacher.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we have to depend on them, but there actually is a lot of like groundedness when someone who's already went through it sits with you.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you need to eat some food. You need to make sure that, you're still very much like doing some of the physical stuff because you can kind of get caught in between worlds,
Yeah.
So I think having someone to help ground you is so important. And there are, I think you're doing some of that work with people and lots of people online are like, hey, this might happen, So
Yeah.
I had, I've always had, visions and clear cognizance and all that. But when I started doing Kundalini yoga, it started, like you were saying, like kind of visions with your eyes open. You're just in the middle of the day. And so it did kind of activate a deeper level of it. And then I started having guides working on me. And I didn't know like what they were, who they were.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and I had an Akashic record reading. And similar to you, like you just had these sensations in your body. I was like, I felt like at one point that my chest had been cut open. Like it didn't hurt, but like my heart had been removed and that they had like something was like swirling around it and they would put it back in and it would cause me to gasp, or it would be like, like feel like my uterus or I'm like, so I asked the records, I'm like, who is working on my organs?
Yeah.
Like, why am I having these weird sensations? But then I would feel like better,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then they were like, oh, well, this is your MAP team. Apparently they're the medical assistance program. And because in a past life, I was already connected to them as I was going through these upgrades, they were like working on me grounding it. But I had no idea what was happening. And then, so that was associated with some fear, right?
Yeah.
So this is why I think having some guidance helps you say, okay, well, it's not so scary if I can just say, okay, these are guides. This is for my highest good, and it helps ground it, I think, a little bit more,
Yeah. Definitely think so. Yeah. And yeah, so while I'm experiencing, all these other things, I start going through an initiation. Mm-hmm. So I can, when I lay down at night, I can feel my astral body is being pulled by gods because they're wanting to really push me through some of the things that I experienced. So it was all information for me to have an understanding of what I was going to encounter.
Right.
Really, that's what it was. And I started finding myself being pulled on ships of cosmic entities so often at that point. And I have seen 40 or so at this point to date. And I'm always excited when it happens because it's always a really cool experience. I'm either being pulled to meet them face to face or talk to them, or I actually find myself on ships working, doing stuff on the ship. And I would have never imagined that I would have had the experience that I've had with it all. Mm-hmm. But I'm very open to it. And before I actually just, was thrusted into this expansion, that was an intense expansion for me. I was already like calling out to them,
Right.
in recognition. Like, I know that you're out there. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I've been pretty open to it, and always excited when I meet a new origin or species and I get to learn a little bit about their personality and their characteristics and their essence. It's a beautiful thing, really.
Right. I feel like if you approach it without the fear, then you're just going to get shown more and more. But if you have fear, you'll hit walls and they'll be like, okay, well, she's scared, so we're going to buy.
Yeah.
But I was scared at first, okay? Like, I remember reading a book on Arcturians, and in the book, they were like, if you're reading this, we're here. And I was like, nope. I was, like, not ready for, like, beings to just be showing up.
Yeah.
And I worked through that fear. Because I like, what am I learning from this? Why am I afraid? And I just wasn't ready. I needed to ground more and have other experiences. And then I was more open to it, where it didn't freak me out so much.
Right.
Because I realized that, I have versions of me that are kind of like these beings, or past lives where I was, from different planets and things. So I got a little less afraid the more I went into my past lives, the more I realized that I'm very much already been connected to these beings, like way before I read the book,
Yes.
So that I think that helped a little bit, but it is, intimidating. We haven't been taught our true origins. We don't really know who we are, and I think it's just like kind of can be a little mind shattering.
Yeah.
When you start seeing this stuff,
It is. It shakes your foundation. Mm-hmm. It breaks limitations and beliefs, and I really think that's the beauty of it.
right?
And when all this was sort of going on for me, I actually had some cosmic beings pull me onto a ship and put a device on my head so they could study my ascension process. So I think they find it they find it just as fascinating
Right.
as we do, and they want to understand it so that it can be a smoother process
Right.
for us to transition through.
Right. So you brought up ascension. Could you share a little bit about what ascension is and how is it affecting us on a personal and cosmic level?
So for me, or just my opinion, about ascension, it's a way for us to break through human limitation. Mm-hmm. We actually have an understanding to learn who we are, to learn what we're not, reunite with cosmic families, and also bring in more harmonizing energy within ourselves and on this planet. We are evolving, and the energy on the planet is evolving as well. And I feel like we are moving in to this space and place and energy where people can just be who they are, what they are, without fear, less judgment. And I definitely think awakening and having an ascension is a huge part in us being able to do that. Mm-hmm. As we evolve, the energies are evolving, and we need to keep up with that. So, and it's not just, it's individually, it's great that we go through this process because we are able to help our brothers and sisters and anchor in this energy. But the cosmic families are out there and want to connect with you and reunite with you.
Right.
And they're beautiful, and they're loving, and they are compassionate, and they want to see their families again.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize that the truth that they are out there, and that this is what they are to you. Mm-hmm. So ascension is a way for us to reconnect to that part of ourself.
Right. And it is empowering,
Yeah.
especially when a lot of us are going through, isolation and feeling just kind of weird here, anyways. I had a lot of not such a great connection with my bloodline, with my family. And so I never really felt like I belonged anywhere. So as I began going through this process and meeting guides and people that I had loved in past lives and, that stayed behind so that they could help me in an energetic way, I would get emotional because I'm just like, I always kind of like wanted this family. And I knew that I couldn't just exist without any help. No, I was like, so when I connected, it made me feel like more at home and safer here,
Yeah.
and just like rekindling old friendships and things like that. So it was a really beautiful experience.
Yeah.
And it still is. I still connect with new guides all the time.
Right.
So it is just, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Talking about like the earth is also going through an ascension. I started studying esoteric astrology, and they would talk about sacred and non-sacred planets and how earth is considered non-sacred right now, and she's actually about to go through her initiation, and it's up to us to, because our vibration affects her, to help her, to go through that transition. And it made me just feel like, wow, like what I do is important. It matters. It helps like my mother, like Mother Nature. It benefits, the more I step into love, the more I try to be harmonious and just taking care of all the life around me. Like she also benefits. And so it is this like symbiotic relationship. And I just never thought about it that way. I didn't realize that I was that important.
Right.
And I think as you step into this power, you realize, wow, I have a role to play here. And it's just as important as Earth herself, like, because she's
Yeah.
playing a role in the greater scheme as well. So
Yes.
it's just, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's like it goes so big, it gets so small, but even like the tiniest microscopic thing impacts the whole.
It does.
So it's like, it's so empowering in that moment. But then you have to be more cautious because you realize, wow, if I'm affecting the whole, when I'm just spouting out shit and like, I'm just like in that negative space, which we all get to at times, but I'm more mindful now. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, I got to be careful what I say. I have to be careful my thoughts, as soon as I start having icky thoughts, I get energy work done, or I meditate, or I ask my guides, why am I feeling this thing, versus just feeding it more,
Right.
which is so easy to do. It's so easy to say,
Yes.
okay, I'm just going to stay depressed forever. I'm going to start hating people and ricocheting back and forth with bitterness. But it's like, it's actually helped me be more mindful with how I use my energy,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, what are some of the gifts that you have, and were you born with these, or did they develop over time?
I had zero gifts before I started meditating.
Okay.
And I was always fascinated with, psychic abilities and all those sorts of things. They seem like magical. But I was not able to tap into them until I began the meditation process. And then, when I started to go through some of the changes and the evolution process, as I said, I began to connect more with spirit. I had no clue that trees were spirits until I came face to face with one.
Right.
And so all those experiences helped me have a greater understanding of nature and how we should honor, animals and nature and all that sort of stuff. When going through the initiation stuff, I was heavily traveling in Astral, and I still do, but not as heavily as before. I found myself in schools in the astral realm learning things. So I have been given the gift of multiplying from Yahweh. So I can multiply myself about 6 times. I've also been given the shape-shifting ability by spirit, which ultimately I think these are just DNA-like activations, or, stuff that's already within you. It just needs to be unlocked
Right.
by experience. Some sort of an experience, or, energy. So I can also blend, which is something I just recently learned about. I can blend into the environment, so I can blend into grass and the ground and not be seen. Kind of like a chameleon ability. But I have to say the shape-shifting gift is probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've turned into lions and all sorts of things in the face of danger, you know.
It's interesting because the more I'm on the path, the more I play around with these energies and then look at the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, I think about shape shifting as really just integrating. Like when you see, a chameleon doing that, it's showing you, okay, you have that ability.
Right.
When you see a tree that's rooted, you're like, oh, I have that ability. But because we're really just like one thing. And so there's no animal, there's no plant, there's no mineral that you can't mimic because it is you.
Right. Yeah.
It's just that separation is an illusion, and that illusion is, a part of the game.
Right.
But it's like so cool now, like when I see even a bug, and I'm like watching this thing roll up, and I'm like, oh, I could do that, like I could dig under, but it's like, I think that's the beauty of being really aware of the other living forms around you, that you're like, okay, well, if they can do that, I could do a version of that as well. And that's where I feel like that shape shifting, starts awakening. And that's, I used to do these meditations. I was reading the Steiner book, How to Know Higher Worlds. And the first thing was meditate with crystals. And the more you meditate with crystals, the more you realize that it's really not that different, and that you, just like that amethyst in your hand, have that same kind of vitality and energy. It's just like, it's just right there. It's like all mineralized and dormant, but you can access it at any time. You don't actually need the crystal
Right.
once you've connected to it. And then the next meditation would be meditate with plants. And when I started meditating with plants, I realized I can kind of communicate with plants. They have personalities, they have an energy signature.
Right.
And like I can integrate like chamomile, so like even if I'm out in, the park or whatever, and I'm like anxious, because I have meditated with chamomile so much, I can just think chamomile, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm connected to it.
Right.
And then animals, same thing, and it's like in these meditations, the more I would do them, the more I realized, oh, this is kind of like a little hack, because the more time you spend really like focused on it, you realize there is no separateness.
Right.
So that's like where the key is, and it would just expand the more, and then you would meditate with a person.
Right.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
I did a white tantra meditation, so it's like hours and hours of these different meditations, and the guy in front of me, I never met him before this moment, and I literally watched him start shape-shifting. Like at one point he was a little boy, and then he like aged right in front of me, and then he would start morphing. But the key is like to keep looking in their eye. Like no matter what's happening, don't break eye contact. And he was looking at me, and like I could tell. I was like, oh God, there's no telling what he's seeing.
Yeah.
And at the end we both like teared up, and we like, he was so beautiful, in all these forms. But
Yeah.
I think we are all like have these abilities, but we just don't know until we play around with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. I think we all are connected to Atlantean and Lemurian times, where we were all deeply connected to all things. And that has been forgotten over time. And I think that is what we're returning to. I think that energy is what we're moving toward.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have to say that the astral travel is a big part of you learning all those sorts of things about yourself and where you've come from, and the ancestry. It's definitely where you learn about the gods and the goddesses and the many different energies that reside in the cosmos. The Zeus, like the Sky Daddies, because they all have their personality as well and their essence. Some of them are more, some of the energies out there are more compassionate, like the gods that I've seen. And some of them are a little more stern.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with the feminine energies. You run into the feminine goddesses who are a little more loving and compassionate and just perfectly accepting of like their true nature. They're coming to you naked, just in that divine femininity, and being just open and proud of expressing themselves that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have some of the feminine energies that are a little more mothering and some that are a little more stern. You run into all those sorts of energies there in the cosmos that you run into here.
Mm-hmm.
And all the archangels they're all different in that sense as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have traveled to the hub, I'll call the hub of the divine realm, where all the divine entities reside. And in traveling there, everything is in white light.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. The walls are white, the ceilings are white, everything around you is just very bright and lit up. And in their presence, there with them, you are perfectly complete in all ways.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind, body, and spirit is at home, and you feel a sense of completeness and love that is so powerful that you won't want to come back.
Right.
You won't want to come back. But those experiences have been deeply healing for me, and I have been grateful to meet them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's really beautiful to be at one with everything.
Right.
The I am everything. You hear that I am everything. It's that
Right.
presence of just being connected to it all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the cool thing to experience, is you just being connected to all that is.
Right. And then I feel like that's where the remembrance comes in,
Yeah.
because we came out of that energy, and then the ego and the personalities and all that start developing, which is a part, I think, of our evolutionary process.
It is.
So it kind of sucks, like, especially when you go back and you're like, wow, we were all connected. Why are we disconnected now? But it's because we learned different things, I think,
It is. Yeah.
through these different phases. But
Yeah.
talking about some of the gods and goddesses, I didn't quite realize, I was always obsessed with Greek mythology. Okay. Like, read the Iliad out loud, like the whole
me
thing.
too.
Like, I just loved it. I was really drawn to it, but I didn't realize, like, okay, like, how is this relevant? Then as I'm going into the records and having these experiences, I realized that the myths sort of like prepare us for those energy signatures, so that when we're out, we're like, oh, that was Kali, and it's like, if I hadn't read that myth, I might not recognize
Right.
the energy. And so it's almost like the myths are like alive in a certain way. They have been condensed down to this little like story, but then when you're traveling, you're like, that was Daddy Saturn, that,
Right.
and you're like, because there's a feeling when you read that myth.
Yeah.
And, you read myths on Saturn, you get a little fear, you get a little shaky. You're like, okay, I don't know about this. Then when you meet Saturn, you're like, oh, this feels exactly the same as when I read your myth. So I think it helps us recognize them.
Yeah.
So the myths aren't deeper than I think that we even realize as we are introduced to them.
Right.
But when you travel, you're like, all of that wasn't a waste. All
Yeah.
the time we spent reading all, the Odyssey, Iliad, all this, it wasn't for nothing that it was like helping us understand these characters. Same with the biblical characters and, all of these religious texts.
Yeah.
It's deeper than just
yes.
some religion. It's actually, these are spiritual beings that people have tried to like document and tell the tale of. And thank goodness they did that, because it helps us all remember
Right.
and recognize them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
It's the breadcrumbs that have been out there for thousands of years, but not a lot of people realize that, with religion, so many people get caught in like one religion. I personally feel like that there's truths in all of it. And that is really, I think it really helps us get an understanding of it all.
Right.
Because that is the information that's been left for us.
Yeah.
But I feel like we have to put it all together. It's like a giant puzzle that has to be put together.
Right.
So you can remember and find your way home.
Right. And I feel like the division of the religions is where it feels toxic, because everyone's arguing over who's right, and they have forgotten that it's all just one part of the story, but they don't get that because they've disconnected themselves from the other ones.
Yeah.
So they're saying, well, I'm only going to read this one book. I'm not going to read anything else. But when you read the other books, it helps you expand on that book.
Right.
So, I was raised more around Christianity because, East Tennessee. But the more I started studying, Hinduism and Buddhism and all this, I started understanding like Jesus's archetype more.
Right.
And like some of his other incarnations. And like then I actually developed a deeper appreciation.
Yeah.
For it.
Exactly.
When I expanded. And I think that there's some fear around expanding, but I'm like, I just don't, like I feel like it's part of it. Like you're supposed to like integrate this and then move on and like learn something else, and then you come back with this it's like you have more reverence for what you were raised with, because you realize, okay, this is where it comes from.
Yeah.
And this is a cosmic story.
Yeah.
This is bigger than just human. Yeah, we play our role, but this is a grand story of all time. So
yeah,
you're going to if you miss the beginning of the story, then it like, I don't know, it makes your story like harder to understand because you don't have the whole like first eras of it.
Right.
Like it's just chopped off.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, with the multidimensional experience that I've been having, what happens is I see myself in another time. Some of those have been more cosmic. Mm-hmm. So I'm taken on a travel experience where I see myself. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I am just witnessing myself. Other times I embody that energy, and I am not just seeing that, oh, I can feel this is me somewhere else out there. I am indeed that person. My guides like to show me mirrors so I can look at myself to see who I am, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. And so at night, what happens to me is I slip into sleep, or I go to sleep, and I slip into astral, and I'm jumping into all the multidimensional energies that I am.
Right.
So I get clips of experiences from all of them, which is really something I'm still learning about. Sometimes I'll slip into sleep and I'm on a ship, and I'm, of course, I know everyone that I'm speaking to. It's like I've seen them, so many times, but and when I come back to my body, I'm like, I have no clue who that was.
Right. Right.
But yeah, so that's what's, I'm slipping into the different multidimensional entities that I am living simultaneously. We are just a fractal of the overall energy, of the overall being that we are. You know, astral is one aspect of who you are,
Right.
but there are hundreds probably
Yeah.
of other aspects of you living out in the cosmos simultaneously to this life that you're experiencing as well.
Right.
And that's a really cool experience to have.
Yeah, and I really have, a different relationship to time now. I have been told that I'm a time traveler, which I think you partly are too. That's why you're doing it so naturally. But when I go to what seems as a past life, it doesn't feel like it's in the past. When I'm there, it's present.
Right.
And it's like where your attention goes, energy flow, and it kind of comes alive.
Right.
So like when I go to Lemuria in these visions, like I'm there, like there's communication happening. I went to a time period where I could like read the newspaper. It's dated. I'm like, this is not just some past memory. Like this is happening right now.
Yeah.
And I'm just like in it. And then I can, jump out when I need to. But it's just, I don't know. Time is not what we think it is.
No.
It's not separating it like we think.
Right. Yeah. No, it's not. It seems like that, it's sort of like a cycle. I feel like we're just cycling in and out of different forms and experiences. But really, my opinion, I don't think past lives should be termed as past lives.
Right.
I think it's all just a linear timeline.
Right.
And because we actually are that same soul energy that has just gone through many cycles over and over and over and over. But
Right.
we are, that's the cool thing to understand is we are actually that soul, that same soul.
Right.
And that really we haven't died in a sense,
Right.
because we are still that being, and that we've experienced in so many different timelines.
Right. Yeah. And it's so
It's fascinating.
fascinating is the word. It's like amazing to go into these other lifetimes. So I've been able to find 27 of my past lives. I've been told that I have like 987. And I feel like they still evolve because I'm living out other versions. I'm being born all the time. But those were the ones that are really impacting this life. 987. That's a lot. So I've been able to find 27 of them, 27 names, 27 eras, time period, where I've explored and been able to talk to people in my lifetime from that point, bring back messages and cycles, especially when I'm going through a cycle right now that has the same energy signature as that version of me. Then I'll connect to that version of me. And then that version of me becomes the guide.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, this is the same thing we went through, but this time you're going to do it different.
Right.
And how cool is it to get that guidance versus just like living out these cycles and not leveling up each time because you don't notice that you're in it.
Right.
But then when you start doing this kind of work, you're like, oh, I noticed this pattern and I'm not going to fail this time. This time I'm going to do the integrity thing. This time I'm going to stick with it. This time I'm not going to give up. But I don't know. I just feel like that guidance is like priceless and it's so awesome. It's like, I want to talk about it all the time. It's like these missionaries go out, share the good news. And I'm like, but I have to ground it because people think I'm crazy.
Right.
But I feel like sharing it is so cool because you're like, you have all this guidance. Like you can connect to all these versions of yourself. Like you're multifaceted, but you give people small doses of it because they might just be like, okay, this person's on something.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And really, I think we're all older than time. I imagine that in between some of the lives that we've had here planetary, we've also been in spirit world for a certain amount of times planning how we're going to come back and do it this time.
Right. And like healing and recovering so that when we come in, we're not just like, like wounded right
Right.
out the gate. So I think sometimes we spend even longer in that, I guess
Yeah.
it's like Kamaloka or David Shaw, and they have different words for some of the worlds in between worlds kind of
Right.
thing. And there is recovery, I think. And like you're doing the past life review, you're like, okay, where do I want to start this time? Which
Right.
lesson that I didn't complete do I want to go in with?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like actually it's all set up pretty perfect. I mean, coming back into an earth incarnation, if you could remember some of the trauma and things that you experienced in lives before, it would probably be crazy. You'd probably feel crazy. You would
Right.
have these moments of, of remembering things that are not so pleasant. So
Right.
I feel like that us passing through that veil of forgetfulness, as they call it, when we reincarnate again, is set up so we don't have to carry that burden or
Right.
whatever, that experience, uh, you know, forward in this
Right.
life. But if we look and seek, I think that we'll find things that are buried. And,
Right. When we're ready for them,
right,
they come up.
you're right.
So you might go get a past life thing and it's all the positive, like a really positive, happy life and everything was great. And maybe that's sort of what you need at that time. But then maybe you're going through a cycle and it's more important. Your guides might show you some of the trauma. It might be like, why are you scared? It's because you lost your child in this lifetime at this
Right.
exact stage. So you're now having anxiety. And now we're going to show you so that you realize this doesn't have to happen again. But that's why you're having anxiety for no reason,
Yeah, this
you know?
this 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 fear is an emotion, and that's all it is.
Right.
That's connected to something that
Right.
you've experienced. Yeah,
Right. For sure.
yeah, it's
So
deep.
do you think that everybody has the ability to astral travel?
Yes, I do. I think everyone can unlock and open themselves, expand themselves beyond human, what we feel, or like human limitations. And I also feel like that just about everybody finds themselves questioning, why am I here? Or I feel like I'm connected to the stars for some reason, or I'm drawn to Greek mythology and I don't know why. I think there's these things, these little things that come up within everyone that are messages to us, like, that this is not all that is. It's actually much more beautifully complex than what you could even imagine. And if a person chooses to travel that path, they're going to find that they have all sorts of gifts and abilities. Each person has different ones. I believe that each person has a different gift and ability, but as far as psychic connection and astral travel and all those things, I feel like we all have those.
Right.
They're
Just
just
like we can
different.
all breathe, we can all digest, we
Yeah.
can all activate our psychic centers.
Yeah, absolutely. And the light body, which is really huge, the Kundalini, and that enables us to hold more light quotient in our body. Our body is actually, your cells and everything are vibrating at a higher rate of speed. And with that gives us the ability to also like feel and also pull in more energy from the quantum field. So I feel like that enhances the experience in a lot of ways.
Do you have any like guidance around activating the light body? Is there any, like warnings or protection or anything like that that you can give people to if they have a little fear around it?
I would say that if that is part of the path for people, it will happen. Most people have a really easy time anchoring in the higher energy centers of the psychic gifts and the connection to source and all that sort of stuff. The lower chakras are what takes some time to integrate. Through my meditation process, it happened naturally for me. And I think that the soul star has a lot to do with that, with the next level expansion if you've already been working on the chakras and the energy centers in the body. So the soul star is the next step. And that is the next place to go, to pull that energy into that soul star. That's the next expansion point. And it's, if people have fear about it, I believe it's because it's not understood. You know, a lot of people have fear about what they don't understand. And my experience with everything, I've definitely gone through periods of, you know, where it was difficult and hard. But if I had to do it all over again, I would do it over and over. I would go through it over and over and over to have experienced what I have, because it's been a true like blessing for me to understand myself on this deep of a level.
Yeah, it's so empowering. And I feel like so many people are just kind of depressed, and they don't even know why. They'll just, you know, you ask them like, what's wrong? And they're like, I don't even know. And I think it's because of this disconnection to that, the essence, their true essence, like their true self,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, I feel that way too.
And they don't even know how to describe it because they don't even realize that it exists,
Right.
you know? But I
Yeah.
think people are talking about it more. You know, I used to bring up certain things and like people wouldn't even look at me. They would just turn away and walk, you know? And I'm like, oh, okay. But now it's like there's a conversation at least,
Right.
you know? And it's not like people are just like dissociating as soon as you say light body and they're like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
It's like they're more inquisitive. So it makes me feel like something has shifted collectively to make it a little bit more accessible for people,
Right.
you know. And I don't know if that's part of the ascension thing or
Yeah. I think it is. I think there's a lot going on energetically on our planet right now, trying to usher us into a new energy, a new way of being. I also think that a lot of people are looking to connect with that divine spark within them that they are. Everybody is, you know, wants to feel something true and beautiful and, you know, experience a love that is just like pure. And I think everyone is looking for that connection with the divine because that's where it's at.
right.
I think that we remember it in a sense, like that we almost know that it's there, but we can't quite put our hands on where it is and how we can reach it. And we experience those beautiful moments of love when we enter into a new relationship, or we're connecting to a song, or spending time with our family and our pets, and you sort of feel that love. That's us connecting with that part of us, but it goes much deeper than that, and I really think that that's what everybody on the planet is searching for, that they feel like they're not connected to anymore, and that's it, the divine love.
Yeah. And I feel like that is when people talk about 5D, I think some people are like, oh, well, that's a far out thing. Like they think that we're actually going to, I don't know. I don't know what they think. I think
Right.
they think it's different than it is. And I'm like, no, this is a frequency of love. You know, the fifth dimension is very much heart centered.
Yeah.
And we've just been kind of disconnected from that heart space.
Right.
And when you think about these bodhisattvas, these ascended masters, all these people, they're not necessarily better than us. It's just that they had already activated that heart center, and then they come and like help us and like share these stories of compassion and empathy and how, like loving even your enemies and all. And it's like because they were trying to like set us up for that heart opening.
Right.
And kind of guide us in that way.
Yeah.
And now I feel like it's just starting to happen, and I think it's freaking some people out because they're like, maybe they didn't realize that they could even open that center.
Yes.
And so it might be like, okay, I'm having heart palpitations, like I'm starting to like love animals that I've always hated, and
Yeah.
like I want to connect with people more or whatever it is, and like they don't even necessarily know what's going on, but
Right.
I think it's affecting everybody.
Yeah. And the heart expansion will cause all sorts of sensations and feelings and things like that. I've actually felt like I had an expansion. The first expansion I had is like, in what people call the bliss stage. You have the awakening where the wake up, some people call it, and the bliss stage is an expansion of the heart. And so that's where you really get to experience that first little sensation or that energy of your heart space expanding. And the second one that I had felt like a resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best way I could describe it. And I've had some other expansions since then that I actually felt like I was having some chest pain.
Mm-hmm.
But I could tell it wasn't related to the heart. It was in the heart center.
Right.
So that expansion of the heart can bring out some different symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And but the earth already has so many realms and matrix within it. The fifth dimension realm or matrix already exists here on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we are just moving into it. We are integrating into that energy.
Right. And we've kind of been, I think, slipping in and out of it for
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah.
But at some point, I think we're going to integrate
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think so too. And yeah, I mean that's why the ascension is like super important right now.
Right.
So we can evolve here.
Right. And there's been a lot of psychics and I think Edgar Cayce and Rudolf Steiner talks about in this next cycle, all humans will develop these psychic abilities. Because we had it in the earlier stages, then we sort of, move away from it. We become more intellectual, which is good. So now when we open up to that heart space, we're going to have like the ability to understand it. And then we're going to get those psychic abilities again.
Right.
And I just feel like we'll approach it differently because we're like more evolved as we went through these phases. So,
right.
But it seems a little crazy as it's happening, I think.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But yeah, we are definitely stepping into higher human consciousness, which will benefit everything.
I've seen you post and share a little bit about some of your experiences with portal work. Could we explore this a bit and talk about some of that with us?
Yeah, I can share a little bit with you about it. I didn't even know what I was doing in the beginning. My soul was just sort of guiding me along. So I would find myself in astral travel, opening up portals into dark spaces to open up portals that had been closed down for a really long time to allow some of the energies to anchor back in. I do feel like during Atlantean and Lemurian times, those portals were open, but they were closed down. So I have been working in at night astrally to reopen some of those portals. And the coolest portal experiences I have are in water, because those are the galactic portals. I find myself sitting in tubs sometimes in the astral realm, and I go under the water and I come out in the cosmic realm. And so there I interact with, with like the cosmic beings. But I find myself more recently just going through the water portals to go out and communicate. In the beginning, I definitely was opening up old portals that had been closed down. And when I would run into one that my guides did not want me to travel through or open, I would see a door close in front of me. It was like, no,
Right.
yeah, not that one.
Right.
So, yeah.
Like not ready for it.
Right.
Yeah, I honestly didn't think about portals that much for most of my life. But during my very first Akashic reading that morning, as I was getting ready, I was about to walk out the door. I had this very intense spasm, and it felt like right over like my left ovary area. To the point, like I was on the phone with my husband, and I was like, like, oh my God, just give me a second. I was like trying to breathe, and then it passed, and I kind of forgot about it. Whatever. I'm like, well, that was weird. And then I go to get the reading, and I had my questions, so I'm like, we're going to talk about all this stuff. As soon as my records open, this person had no idea. I didn't tell her about this experience. She's, streaming the records through her, and she's like, that energy in your lower abdomen today was a portal opening, and we need you to know that that's what it is so that you can close it when you go into public spaces, so you're not absorbing so much energy, so that you can open it and close it when you wish. I was like, what are you talking about? But I was like, there's no way that she knew I had that weird pain this morning. And, I didn't even ask. Like, as soon as the records opened, they were like explaining that was a portal. It opened. It was sort of like a falling star. It landed and opened today, right before this. And it was like preparing me. But I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, first off, the fact that she even like said that validated the whole reading for me right out the gate, because there was no way she could have known. And then I'm like, okay, there's a portal in my body right now. Like, these are not just, jumping through other dimensions. Like, some of these portals actually exist within us.
Yeah.
You
We are the portal.
Right, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So, like, I expanded in so many ways of, like, thinking about what a portal even is, and, like,
Yeah.
how we can experience them in many different ways, not just, like, some science fiction novel, which, I mean, sometimes they might look like that, whatever, but,
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I had this really cool experience when I remembered that I was a light being. Because during this awakening, we are actually, in a sense, reconnecting and with our older, it's like a merging of energy. You're re-merging with all that you are. And I traveled to this beautiful planet and went inside of a light being, a blue one. I felt like I was healing some sort of shame or something. It was an old wound, I could tell, when I entered into this space and energy. And when we reunited as one, no longer separate, we reunited as one, I shot like straight up in the sky, and it was a remembrance of I'm a light being.
Right.
With that energy, that merging of energy, it became so intense for me over the next few days that I felt like I was actually in between worlds. here, but I could feel that my astral body was not. Like I could feel when I would be traveling and be almost slipping into a different like realm. And also during that time, my gods held me still one night after I reunited with that light being. And a massive amount of energy and frequency moved through my ears. It was so massive. I've never experienced anything like it, but it was some sort of transmutation of energies that needed to be done here on the planet. So it was transmuting energy for the light beings. That's my understanding of it. And it was a massive wave of energy. I've never experienced anything like it. So, yeah, I've experienced so much with all this. It's crazy.
Right. I love to be able to talk about it so openly, and especially with someone who's all, having these, because sometimes I feel like I have to really filter myself down. But it's really cool with you, like, because I've been following you long enough where I'm like, she's on that page. Like, we can really go deep. I was so excited. Like, I've been waiting for this.
Yeah. Yeah. And astral children.
Right. Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
A lot of people don't realize that you can co-create with other cosmic entities and energies, and this is ultimately how I think we have our hybrids, our hybrid races.
Okay.
Because really what's happening is you're exchanging energy, right? Just like with a healing session, you're exchanging energy there, and so your energy is connecting with another entity's energy, and you are co-creating life, even though it's an energetic form. We are all just energy anyway.
Right.
As time goes, I think that they age, those energies age, because I have seen my children as small babies, and then when I visit them in the astral schools, they have grown.
Okay.
So it's an as above, so below thing. You know what I mean? And I think that when I tell people a little bit about that, it sort of freaks them out a little bit. But it's a beautiful thing. And I would have never imagined in 1,000 years before I had the experience myself that it was even possible.
Right.
Yeah.
I was reading some book, and I think it might have been covering the astral plane. And he was talking about how our thoughts alone are giving, birthing these forms. And so if you have a really quick thought and you don't really come back to it, it's like born and it kind of dissipates pretty quickly. But if you have a thought and you sort of nurture it, and you can actually like kind of birth something, and then it has more of a living faculty to it. So I feel like that's similar to what you're saying, only he didn't explain it like children, but he is saying like sort of these thoughts are birthing out energies in the astral plane.
Yeah.
And some of them stick around longer. Some of them are very short-lived. You think about like the life of a butterfly, it's like, a week or something. But then some of them do kind of grow into their own entities themselves, which is, it's hard. I think that's kind of hard to ground, but you're definitely not the first person that I've heard talk about it. So
it's a lot of, a lot of people are maybe not as open to talk about it.
Right.
But I have also run into some people that have had the experience. I think it's just one of those things that people really don't want to bring up too much,
I get it. I get it.
it.
It's not like if someone hadn't had any of these other experiences, it would sound absolutely wild.
Yeah. It would. It definitely would.
I think it's happening, so it's cool to talk about it. So people are like, well, I kind of might have had a dream about that one day, and now it makes sense. So.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
So we've talked about some of the gods and goddesses. We've talked about some archangels. Are there ever like other types of beings like that we would consider, the more fallen types of beings, the shadowy types of beings? Do you ever run into those
Oh
lately?
yeah, I run into a vast amount of energies. I I think that it's it's all about frequency and vibration with them too. So when you think about people talking about being in lower vibration of anger and judgment and all this sort of stuff, that's what the darker energies come to me as. Some of them are fallen angels, and I can usually pick up their energies a little bit easier than I was in the past. Because if you're an astral traveler, you're going to run into these sorts of things.
Right.
It's good to have an understanding about it. I've also run into people's shadow selves, the shadow versions of them that are not healed.
Right.
And I've experienced being paralyzed by someone else's shadow self. So, yes, I have encountered shadows and the darker energies. That is just sort of still here on the planet with the collective. So, people are going to run into it. They're going to run into those energies that are, and not just those energies, but you also have spirit energies which are still in those sorts of vibrational states themselves.
Right.
So they, they still carry their personalities with them in the spirit realm. They have unhealed things. I've run into witches and all sorts of energies that are still in that lower vibrational collective energy that we have here on the planet.
So when you encounter them, do you experience like fear? Do you want to run away? Or do you work with them to try to maybe help? Or.
It depends. That's another one of those things where, like, my soul just knows what to do.
Right, right.
But I have also been working with that energy as well. My guides will pull me into haunted locations to feel the energy of some entities there, because they want me to tap into that masculine energy more and stand in my power. It holds great power for me. So there are, depending on the situation, with some entities I stand ground with, or I'm pretty standing in my masculine energy with them. And then others I know to just sort of get away from.
Right.
I'll slip through a portal doors to throw them off.
Right, right.
I have run into energy blobs that have some level of consciousness. They're not human looking. They just look like blobs of energy. And my experience with some of them have been, weird. But yeah, I've encountered that, and I really think that if you're an astral traveler or you're a medium or whatever, those energies are you're going to run into those, and it's important to work with your guides to understand how to
Right, how to
how to work
handle
with
it.
that energy, because yeah, you're going to run into it. Ultimately, I think that it is part of the path. It is part of the initiation. So if you step into power and you become that warrior energy, then you're going to start working more in that warrior energy in the astral realm where it's needed.
Right, right.
And if you fall into that place of like the healer and you want and the being of service, then at night you're going to be doing that. And I've
Right.
experienced both. You know, I have found animals in the astral realm that are still in like the 3D collective like energy, where they are maybe still experiencing life, you know, things that happen to them in life, and I ascend them. So, and children a lot. I also go into haunted locations and remove the children from there that are stuck in that space
Right.
of energy. So I've worked both sides of that. And like I said, ultimately I think how you deal with it, how you work with it is the initiation. It is your path. It's how you will move forward.
Right.
Yeah.
So you kind of get to choose the role that you play.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have free will and choice. So yeah, my gods have dropped a little bit of everything on me, including magic, using wands and travel and all sorts of things. Like they really sort of just lay it all out for you, so you can freely choose. Okay, do you want to, do you want to work more as a healer, an energy healer? Do you want to, help us work in the realms to keep some of the other, the dark spirits at bay and help there. So yeah, it's like a smorgasbord of stuff
Right.
that you get to experience to help you ultimately, that is helping you move through the path. Maybe you pick the more shamanic role and you
Right.
start doing soul retrieval. All
Right.
those options are there for you. It's a huge crossroad when you get to that point, because it's like, okay, where do I go from here? What is it that I want for myself? What energy do I want to anchor in here for the planet? And all of it's presented to you at some point, and your guides will help you experience it all. So you can be like, okay, what's your choice?
Right.
And which way do you want to go?
Yeah, I love that. That's a good explanation of it.
Yeah.
So we're getting kind of close to the end, but I would like you to maybe talk about some of the services you offer and some of the support that you help people with during this journey.
Okay. Yeah. So I do healing sessions.
Which I had today. It was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad you had a good experience with that too. Yeah, I do healing sessions. I also teach right now. I have a angel class that I teach to help people connect with the different angels, their energies, and how they come in and help and work with you. That includes understanding how to use the healing colors, because the angels usually have some sort of color of healing that they use. And then I have another class that's called Life Force Energy, which is more about understanding some of the old trauma wounds that you've experienced, that stems from birth to young adult age. So I teach that as well. And I also do Reiki, the Reiki classes, 1 through 4, from beginning to the master class. And other than that, I'm just out spreading,
Right.
spreading my experiences on the path around. Um, but yeah, that's what I've got myself into right now. Anyway, yeah, that's where I'm
So
at.
the session I had today, was that Reiki? Was that a combination? Because I had a lot of visuals. I had
Yeah,
like physical, mental, like spiritual
yeah.
sensations. So was that Reiki or was that
No, well, it is in a way. It is healing as what people call it Reiki, but
right?
it's different.
Right.
It's my version, I guess you could say, of healing, which includes me being connected to the light beings. I actually have chips in my hands that they placed in my hands for the work that I do. So I would call what I do a clearing of energy, not
Okay.
just healing, but also a clearing of the energy body.
Right. Which is interesting to think about my experience, which I might share a little bit, is as you were working, and it might be because you cleared, I saw this egg. Okay. And eggs make me think of like a rebirth. So, so I think you clear, I see the egg, it starts to shake, starts to crack open, and then it's like a version of me as a butterfly. um, which I'm going to meditate on for a while because I think that there's a deeper message,
Yeah.
that I haven't gotten yet. I'm going to work with the records on that. But the cool thing was when I come out of the egg and the shell's laying there, that I intuitively start like grinding the shell up and create an elixir with it, which I consumed, which
Right.
is so interesting.
It is, isn't
But
it?
really looking forward to
Yeah.
asking the records about that. But it did seem as though I gained something at that point, and I'm
Right.
not, So I think there was a clearing, and then I felt like there was sort of this either a renewal or like something new that maybe is coming from that
Right.
session.
Yeah.
Which we'll see. These energy sessions sit with you. You're like 2 years later, and you're like still, you'll process something that you hadn't connected yet. I have aha moments in really awkward times.
Right. Yeah, I do the same thing. It's pretty interesting. You have the same experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to see if you get any sort of information on that. You'll have to let me know.
Yes, I'll definitely message you after I go into
Yeah.
the records tomorrow, and we'll see what
Cool.
they say.
Yeah.
So.
That'd be great.
So, what's the best way for our audience to follow you, connect with you, and keep up with your work?
I have multiple social media accounts. So I'm on Facebook as Jamie Rhea, spelled Rhea, Moonflower. That's where I post just teaching topics, some experiences of Astral. I have a page that I call Memoirs of Astral Travel, where I post a lot of my experiences on there. So I've just started a YouTube account as well, which is Purple Moonflower. So I'm actually going to start doing some more like video about talking about the experiences that I've had rather than just posting, in text or whatever on Facebook.
Right.
But yeah, if anyone wants to reach out to me for anything, yeah, my Facebook is Jamie Rhea Moonflower. You can just send me a message and connect with me there. And yeah, and
Cool. And I'll add that into the description.
yeah,
So that they can find it a little easier.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, this has been wonderful. I really appreciate you coming out and creating this beautiful episode with me.
Yeah, it's really been fun. I feel quite honored and blessed that I finally got to meet you, and that we've had this experience here today. It's been really fun.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.